Good afternoon, and welcome to the 16th Annual Park Forest Police Department Honor Ceremony. Please rise for the posting of the colors by the Coffee Cadet Squadron of the Civil Air Patrol, followed by a performance of our national anthem by performing artists. Ready to.
Color guard, forward, march. Colors, post. Present arms. Present arms. Order arms. Order arms. About face. Forward, march.
Oh, say,
Present arms.
can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we passed were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Once again, good afternoon. I'm Deputy Chief Paul Winfrey. In 2019, the Park Forest Police Department celebrated 70 years of service to the village of Park Forest. Throughout our 70-year history, there have been untold numbers of selfless acts of service, heroic actions, displays of integrity, and good deeds. Only in 1986 did we begin to formally recognize those actions through an awards program, and only in 2005 did we begin to do so publicly through our honor ceremony. We are proud to be able to recognize many noteworthy actions that took place in connection with the Park Forest Police Department throughout 2019. The actions you will hear today represent the very best in our community. Between the first Citizen Award presented shortly and the final presentation of Officer of the Year, you will hear many accounts of exceptional action taken to make Park Forest a better, safer community. That said, there are most certainly moments worthy of recognition that simply never made it to an award nomination. And for that reason, this ceremony is for all of our personnel, civilian and sworn alike, who perform their duties quietly and professionally without expectation of recognition. Each of you who has chosen public service is owed a debt of gratitude. In 2019, we lost 134 officers in the line of duty, including 6 here in the state of Illinois. Those officers are Illinois State Police Trooper Christopher Lambert, McHenry County Sheriff's Deputy Jacob Howard Keltner, Illinois State Police Trooper Brooke Jones Story, Illinois State Police Trooper Gerald Wayne Ellis, Fulton County Sheriff's Deputy Troy Chisholm, and Illinois State Police Trooper Troy Chisholm. We also lost over 200 officers throughout the U.S. to suicide, a death which is not considered a line of duty, but which is undoubtedly impacted by the unique stressors of police work. That staggering number means we lost more police officers to suicide than by any other means. Please join us for a moment of silence for all those who we lost in 2019, followed by a rendition of Amazing Grace by John Dempsey of the Chicago Emerald Society. Mr. Dempsey, thank you very much as always. It is now my privilege to introduce to you the Mayor of the Village of Park Forest, Mr. Jonathan Vanderbilt.
Welcome and good evening to the 16th Annual Park Forest Police Honors Ceremony. I'd like to recognize some of the elected officials this evening that we have in the audience. We have our trustees Teresa Settles, Tiffany Graham, Joe Woods, Maya Hardy, and Glenna Hennessy. If you'd like to stand up. If there's any other elected officials in the house that didn't see you, thank you for coming. I also like to recognize one of our former police and fire commissioners, Mr. Steve Lloyd in the back there. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. And then we also have a former Richmond Park Police Chief, Vito Manito, in the audience. I don't know if we have any other police chiefs. We also have our fire department chief, Natty Shock, in the back there as well. Lastly, I want to recognize, though, the families who take care of our officers day in and day out, when they go home and every night. So I'd like every family member that's here this evening, if you please stand, and if we can give them a standing ovation as well. When they talk about the suicide rates rising among our police officers, it's the families who are the ones who are seeing that burden. And so I thank you for all our crossing guards. I thank you for all the citizens that are here. Thank you to the residents, the families. Thank you to the dispatchers. And most importantly, thank you to our officers for serving and protecting our community day in and day out. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience who's here to receive a Citizen Award today, please meet with Community Engagement Coordinator Rachel Wax to your right, my left, along the brick wall. We've awarded numerous Citizen Awards this year. For the sake of time, we'll read only those for which the recipients are present. The Park Forest Police Department has a long and proud tradition of partnering with our residents. The awards you're about to hear demonstrate the good that comes from citizen involvement in the safety of their community. Per policy, the Citizen Award is issued to any citizen whose actions were instrumental in the apprehension of a criminal or other extraordinary action to protect life or property. On August 6th, Aria Covington, Tyrese Collins-Jones, and Jasmine Anderson were playing in the park in the 200 block of Arrowhead Street when they heard someone calling for help. Aria, Tyrese, and Jasmine soon realized that a nearby resident had fallen outside and could not get up. They also realized that this was an emergency and notified a parent and called 911 to report the incident. The elderly resident was soon being helped by police and paramedics. Their willingness to get involved in the neighborhood and help someone in need is not only a testament to their upbringing, but it also sends a clear message about their character. They are commended for their actions. The Citizen Award is presented to Aria Covington, Tyrese Collins-Jones, and Jasmine Anderson. On March 14th, Jennifer Edwards was leaving her home in the 200 block of Dogwood Street when she saw a man looking into vehicles, several of which were running in unattended. When the man saw that he was being observed, he fled the area. Miss Edwards called 911 and responding officers detained the man, who Miss Edwards confirmed as the person she saw. The man attempted to flee and threw down a realistic-looking BB gun. He was taken into custody, and investigation revealed he had previously committed an aggravated kidnapping in the same area. It is believed he was likely readying to commit another crime. A serious felony crime was solved and another prevented due to Miss Edwards observing and reporting suspicious behavior in her neighborhood. The Citizen Award is presented to Jennifer Edwards. Throughout 2019, Dolores Jones was instrumental in providing valuable information to Park Forest Police personnel and aided in the investigation of several serious criminal offenses, including the resolution of a series of burglaries and felony thefts in her neighborhood. Her willingness to assist included several hours of meeting with officers and detectives and led to substantial information gained in these cases, making her neighborhoods safer and ensuring serious offenses were resolved. The Citizen Award is presented to Dolores Jones. Throughout 2019, Mark and Tina Zeman have provided valuable information which has greatly advanced several investigations into serious crimes. Through reviewing home video surveillance and providing crucial evidence to police, they assisted the Park Forest Police Department with a homicide that occurred in February and a robbery and vehicular invasion in September. Their efforts in cooperation with law enforcement aided in the identification, apprehension, and prosecution of dangerous criminals. The Citizen Award is presented to Mark and Tina Zeman. In the course of a year, there are many individuals and organizations which assist a police department. We will honor 4 such partnerships today. The first to be honored is the Freedom Hall Nathan Manilow Theater, the location we occupy today. Freedom Hall has been the home of the Park Forest Police Department Honor Ceremony since its inception, spanning 16 years, providing an ideal location to recognize police personnel and those who partner with us to keep Park Forest safe in our annual award ceremony. Additionally, for the past several years, Freedom Hall has opened their doors to the Park Forest Police and Fire Departments to host multi-agency tabletop exercises. These exercises provide a means for public safety partners to work through critical incident scenarios and increase preparedness for disasters. The most recent exercise included a live demonstration which was aired on a Chicago area news network. Due to their willingness to host various events on behalf of the Park Forest Police Department, Freedom Hall has become a valued partner with our agency. The certificate of appreciation is presented to the Freedom Hall Nathan Manilow Theater. Receiving the award today were Naomi Fell and Chuck Savy. A1 Towing is one of the regular towing companies for the Park Forest Police Department. In August of 2019, the Park Forest Police Department needed additional vehicles for our Touch-A-Truck event at Unity Day due to a major partner dropping out. With little notice, A1 Towing responded and provided a tow truck for the event, allowing children and residents of all ages to get an up-close view of a tow truck in action, ensuring that our Touch-A-Truck event was a success. The certificate of appreciation is presented to A1 Towing for their willingness to assist the Park Forest Police Department in short notice and making sure our Touch-A-Truck event at Unity Day was a success. The crossing guards of Park Forest are instrumental in ensuring that our school children are able to get safely to school. Providing their services in rain, the bitter cold, snowstorms, and even exceptionally hot days of late August or late May, they can always be found at their posts. Additionally, over the school year, they build relationships with school children and become friendly faces that can offer reassurance and put a smile on a children's way to school or heading home. Our longest serving crossing guard, Meg Bednarsik, has served as a crossing guard for 25 years. Other notable service milestones include Vicki Chandler with 18 years of service and Vicki Zandy with 15 years of service. All of our crossing guards perform exceptionally, and they are an integral part of public safety and school safety in Park Forest. The certificate of appreciation is presented to Park Forest crossing guards Meg Bednarsik, Diane Brzezinski, Vicki Chandler, Richard McCowan, Carl Sanford, Wayne Simpson, Glenn Sterrett, Ralph Taylor, and Vicki Zandy. Prior to presenting police personnel awards, we will play a video giving you a snapshot of 2019 at the Park Forest Police Department, as well as giving you a glimpse of some of the types of incidents to which our officers responded. We will note that the video does show real police incidents, and while they are typical of the type of scene observed in real-life police shows, they may not be suitable for children or for those who may be sensitive to such incidents.
So you know, go ahead. Happy and appreciative I am of y'all today.
You know, and this is why I love Park Forest Police. Get out of the crowd! Get out of the crowd now! Get out of the crowd! Get your hands out now!
This is Chicago Park Forest Day in full pursuit.
Based on what I observed, I'm going to have to place you under arrest for driving under the influence of alcohol. Okay, so do me a favor, turn around, put your hands behind your back.
I just got here. Let me figure something out for you. I don't want you to work yourself up.
I am a man at war, and I am fighting for all of the broken people, all of the people thrown overboard. They always try to shame us, but they don't speak the language. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. Somebody sound the alarm. A fire was set in the dark. It's time that you know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. It doesn't matter if the world is going mad, if we just hold on, if we just hold on, yeah. The sky is falling and the world is going mad, and we sing our songs and we just hold on, yeah. So if you're running, stop running. One life, one chance, start living. Sing it louder just to let the world know. But we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. just hold on, yeah. The sky is falling and the world has gone mad, and we sing our songs and we just hold on, yeah. So if you're running, stop running. One life, one chance, start living. Sing it louder just to let the world know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness. It doesn't matter if the world is going mad, if we just hold on, if we just hold on, yeah. The sky is falling and the world is going mad, and we sing our songs and we just hold on, yeah. So if you're running, stop running. One life, one chance, start living. Sing it louder just to let the world know. No, we're not nameless, we're not faceless, we were born for greatness.
The Outstanding Service Award is presented for an action or service performed during routine duty, which would be classified as an outstanding or exceptional performance. On September 20th, Officer Regis Bowers conducted a traffic stop. Attempting to identify the driver, Officer Bowers perceived the man was providing false information and determined the true identity of the driver and that he had a suspended driver's license. A search of the man revealed crack cocaine in his pocket. With less than 7 months of policing at the time, Officer Bowers turned a routine traffic stop into a felony arrest by observation and looking beyond the ticket. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer Regis Bowers. In May of 2018, Detective Alex Bregan began to investigate a reported stolen vehicle that had been recovered unoccupied after it was involved in a pursuit. Believing the auto theft report to be false, Detective Bregan searched prior incidents, databases, and other sources of information, obtained subpoenas and search warrants, and recovered hundreds of pages of information. After 18 months of work, his investigation provided evidence that the vehicle owner knew who had the vehicle and that it had not been stolen, and a case that had little chance of being solved at the onset was resolved with the vehicle owner being charged with false report of a motor vehicle theft. On November 27th, Detective Bregan began an investigation into an armed robbery that occurred within a suspect's residence, making it difficult to access evidence. Undaunted, he located video evidence online that implicated the suspects. Detective Bregan obtained a search warrant for the residence, where one of the suspects and a .38 caliber revolver were recovered. That suspect was charged with armed robbery, and Detective Bregan also obtained enough evidence to have arrest warrants issued for 2 additional offenders who eventually turned themselves in and were also charged with armed robbery. 2 Outstanding Service Awards are presented to Detective Alex Bregan. On April 26th, Detective Hatham Elian was assigned to work a patrol shift due to staffing shortages. Detective Elian was making a food pickup in Madison when he observed a juvenile that he knew had an arrest warrant. That juvenile approached Detective Elian and asked him for change for a $100 bill, at which time Detective Elian arrested him and recovered a loaded firearm and illegal narcotics. During the investigation, Detective Elian obtained permission to search the juvenile's bedroom and recovered ammunition and a cut ankle monitor bracelet. The juvenile was subsequently taken into secure custody and petitioned for multiple felony charges. In another incident, Detective Elian became aware of a neighbor complaint of drug sales occurring, disrupting the peace of the neighborhood. On December 6th, a search warrant was obtained by Detective Elian and was executed at a Park Forest home after that investigation. An offender was subsequently charged with manufacture and delivery of cannabis, and a drug enterprise interrupted, bringing peace back to the neighborhood. 2 Outstanding Service Awards are presented to Detective Hatham Elian. On December 5th, Officer Vanessa Gauna responded to a home to assist the fire department with forced entry into a home where an elderly woman had fallen and been on the floor for over 3 hours. After assisting entry without damage to the home, Officer Gauna learned that the woman's only caretaker was her 16-year-old granddaughter. Realizing that a long-term solution was needed to truly help the family, Officer Gauna contacted 2 different state agencies, reporting the circumstances and working to obtain needed assistance to ensure the family received resources and assistance. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer Vanessa Gauna. In April, the police department began receiving numerous complaints about 2 dogs running loose and attacking other dogs and people. Community Service Officer Charles Harris recognized the dogs from a previous 2018 incident, and despite the dogs being captured and the owner cited numerous times, incidents that terrorized the neighborhood continue, including in July where the dogs ran into the Park Forest Library, causing patrons and employees to run away or jump on tables. Frustrated at the situation, CSO Harris contacted Cook County Animal Control and with their assistance saw that additional charges were brought against the owner and enforceable requirements put in place that allowed Cook County Animal Control to impound the animals if the requirements were not followed. The dogs have not been a nuisance since his intervention. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Community Service Officer Charles Harris. On October 12th, officers were dispatched to Central Park for a man who called 911 and stated that he wanted to kill toddlers. The man provided his name to dispatch and they were able to obtain his clothing description. Officer Timothy Hoskins arrived and quickly observed the described man talking on a cell phone encircling a group of children. Officer Hoskins ordered the man to the ground and he was taken into custody while yelling at officers to shoot him. The man was taken to the hospital for psychological evaluation pending criminal charges. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer Timothy Hoskins. In the summer of 2019, Officer James Jahimiak started a miniature red dot sight duty use study to show the usability and practicality of the new firearm sighting system. Officer Jahimiak's study involving 10 shooters demonstrated an improved shooting average of over 25% in accuracy using the new sighting system. He then compiled a 15-page research paper with his findings. Additionally, committed to the program, Officer Jahimiak attended a red dot instructor course on his own time. Due in part to his initiative, the Park Forest Police Department is working to implement a red dot sight program. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer James Jahimiak. There will be a series of different events listed here for these awards. On January 14th, Officer Charles Carl and K-9 Tucker had just completed their shift and were heading home when Officer Carl heard the call of an armed carjacking in Madison, followed by the suspects fleeing from car on foot into Richland Park. Officer Carl and K-9 Tucker responded and conducted a track, locating a suspect hiding on a staircase of an apartment building. That offender was later petitioned to court for several felony charges. 2 weeks later, Officer Carl assisted in the pursuit of a stolen motor vehicle when the suspect crashed and fled on foot into Richland Park. Officer Carl and K-9 Tucker tracked the offender to an unsecured garage where Tucker was deployed. The offender was located hiding among boxes. That offender was found to be the same juvenile he had tracked just 2 weeks earlier. On March 26th, Officer Carl stopped the vehicle for an equipment violation and subsequently arrested the driver for no valid license. A search of the vehicle revealed a loaded .40 caliber pistol that was reported to have been stolen out of Hammond, Indiana, just days earlier, and also cannabis. After investigating both the driver and passenger, they were charged with possession of a stolen firearm, unlawful possession of a firearm, and possession of a firearm without a firearm owner ID card. On April 27th, Officer Carl stopped the vehicle for suspicion of driving under the influence. During a protective pat-down of the driver, illegally possessed brass knuckles were recovered. A search of the vehicle revealed a loaded handgun under the front seat, and it was learned the man was a convicted felon. After investigation, the man was charged with armed habitual criminal, a Class X felony, and a deadly weapon was taken off the streets of Park Forest. Weeks later, on May 16th, Officer Charles Carl began a complex identity theft investigation that involved dealing with a retailer in Minnesota. While such an investigation generally is referred to the Investigations Division, Officer Carl started the investigation into this manner and continued, including analyzing forged checks and reviewing video surveillance. And in January of 2020, Officer Carl was able to make contact with the suspect who admitted during an interview. She confessed to the crime and was charged with a felony count of forgery. On December 17th, Officer Carl stopped the vehicle for numerous violations. Upon speaking with the driver said, "I'm sorry," and then put the vehicle in drive and fled. Officer Carl pursued the vehicle, which struck a stop sign in a tree a short distance later with the driver fleeing on foot. Officer Carl pursued and captured the man and learned that the car was stolen. The driver was charged with aggravated fleeing and eluding, aggravated speeding, possession of stolen property, and criminal trespass to vehicle. 5 outstanding service awards are presented to Officer Charles Carl. On December 14th, Officer Jennifer Keith observed suspicious behavior that involved 2 people on foot and 1 in a car in the Cedarwood Cooperative area. As Officer Keith initiated an investigative stop, 1 subject and the vehicle fled, but she was able to detain the other person. A protective pat-down showed he had a large amount of change, an iPod, a car key, and a flashlight. A search of the area showed recent car burglaries. The car key was found to belong to a stolen vehicle and property to have been stolen out of another vehicle. Due to her vigilance, a felony crime in progress was stopped and an offender taken into custody and criminally charged. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer Jennifer Keith. On January 7th, 2019, Officer Justin Malakowski stopped a vehicle at Main Street and Western Avenue. Upon learning that the driver had a suspended driver's license, a passenger suddenly fled the vehicle on foot. Officer Malakowski pursued and caught the man as other officers detained the driver. The fleeing man was found to be in possession of cocaine and cannabis, and retracing his flight path revealed additional narcotics he had discarded as he ran, including ecstasy. Both the driver and passenger were charged with multiple offenses. Only days later, Officer Malakowski was patrolling in the Eastgate neighborhood when he saw a driver he knew was wanted for investigation by other officers, and that subject had a warrant for a violent offense and a violent criminal history. Coordinating assistance from other officers, Officer Malakowski stopped the vehicle and on approach saw the driver moving around the interior of the vehicle as if he were hiding something. After the driver was taken into custody, he was found to be in possession of ecstasy and cannabis and was ultimately charged with possession of a controlled substance, resisting arrest, and he was processed on the arrest warrant. 2 outstanding service awards are presented to Officer Justin Malakowski. On October 20th at approximately 2 a.m., Sergeant Jonathan Menino noticed smoke in the area of 26th Street and Western Avenue. He investigated and found a garage fire on Water Street. Sergeant Menino made contact with the residents who were reluctant to leave the home, but who were persuaded to do so by him. The neighboring home was evacuated as well, and prior to the arrival of the fire department, the fire had spread to both homes. 2 vehicles and a 5th-wheel trailer were consumed by the fire. Due to his quick actions, lives were saved and homes prevented from receiving more serious damage. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Sergeant Jonathan Menino. On New Year's Day 2019, an officer was present in the processing room with a woman arrested for DUI when the woman became combative and physically attacked the officer who attempted to radio for assistance but had difficulty due to other radio traffic at the time. Records clerk Yolanda Martinez, who was unable to make it today apparently, was monitoring the closed-circuit television feed and alerted other officers in the police department of the attack. Those officers quickly came to the officer's aid. Due to Records Clerk Martinez's attention to duty and quick response, a highly dangerous situation was quickly resolved without harm to police personnel. Records Clerk Yolanda Martinez is presented with the Outstanding Service Award. Ryan, I saw you shaking hands. On January 28th, Officer Ryan Purdy located an unoccupied stolen vehicle parked in a driveway on Watsika Street. Officer Purdy monitored the vehicle and attempted to stop it as it left the driveway, and a short pursuit began, but the driver quickly lost control and struck a tree. The driver fled on foot, but Officer Purdy took the passenger into custody. A BB gun and Xanax were recovered from the vehicle, and after the driver was caught, it was learned he was a known violent juvenile offender. He was subsequently petitioned to juvenile court for possession of a stolen motor vehicle, aggravated fleeing and eluding, resisting a police officer, and additional charges. In a separate incident, on May 17th, Officer Purdy made a traffic stop and learned that the driver had an outstanding arrest warrant. The man was arrested and a loaded handgun and ecstasy were recovered from him. Illegally possessed brass knuckles and cannabis were also recovered from the vehicle. After investigation, the man was charged with unlawful possession of a controlled substance, possession of a firearm, possession of firearm ammunition, and additional charges. On December 12th, officers were informed of an anonymous resident complaint about a suspicious vehicle regularly parked on Gentry Street that was involved in illegal activity. Officer Purdy monitored the situation and found the vehicle parked with a person inside that appeared to be sleeping. Upon speaking with the person, Officer Purdy observed evidence of cannabis use. A search of the vehicle revealed cannabis, a digital scale, and illegally possessed ammunition. Acting on a resident's complaint with little information, Officer Purdy developed probable cause that led to an arrest and a resolution of the situation plaguing the neighborhood. 3 outstanding service awards are presented to Officer Ryan Purdy. Looking to make sure somebody's here for this one. On May 3rd, Park Forest police officers responded to the 300 block of Sangamon Street for a woman who had been shot in the stomach. Detective Justin Romovsky responded to the scene and began the investigation, recovering evidence, interviewing witnesses, obtaining a search warrant for cell phone data, and eventually interviewing the victim at the hospital. When taken into custody, the suspect refused to speak. However, due to the thorough investigation by Detective Romovsky, the offender was charged with home invasion and aggravated battery with a firearm, both Class X felonies. Less than a month later, Detective Justin Romovsky began an investigation into the sexual abuse of a 16-year-old by her stepfather. Detective Romovsky downloaded digital evidence from the victim's cell phone, interviewed the outcry witness, and arranged for a forensic interview of the victim, who is on the autism spectrum and has a language impairment. Detective Romovsky learned that the suspect was on the Illinois State Police Murderer and Violent Offender Against Youth Registry and was on parole for the murder of a 1-year-old child. Upon arrest, the suspect refused to speak with Detective Romovsky. However, a search warrant for his phone was obtained and crucial evidence recovered. Detective Romovsky contacted the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and obtained the charge of aggravated criminal sexual assault against the offender. He then contacted the Illinois Department of Corrections, advised them of the charges, and a parole violation warrant was issued. Since the initial arrest, the offender has been indicted on 28 additional charges stemming from this investigation. 2 outstanding service awards are presented to Detective Justin Romovsky. On December 5th, Officer Karolis Sakauskas responded to the Eastgate subdivision for a call of shots fired. While nothing was found at that time, Officer Sakauskas noticed a pickup truck that caught his attention. About 1 hour later, Officer Sakauskas was patrolling the area and saw that same truck. An investigatory stop of 2 people walking away from the truck was conducted, and probable cause led to the search of the vehicle and the recovery of a rifle. Subsequent investigation revealed it was illegally possessed by the man, who admitted to both possessing it and firing it earlier while in the neighborhood. Due to his attention to detail and investigative diligence, an incident that initially had no supporting evidence to show it even occurred was solved. In addition, the deadly weapon was taken off the streets and the irresponsible owner criminally charged. The outstanding award is presented to Officer Karolis Sakauskas. On June 29th, Officer Craig Taylor responded to the 200 block of Rich Road to assist the fire department with a man who was not breathing and unresponsive. Despite life-saving measures taken by Officer Taylor and the paramedics, the man did not survive. The man's wife became extremely distraught and blamed herself for her husband's death. Officer Taylor transitioned his role at that point and began to comfort the woman, calming her and then making calls to family on her behalf. He remained with her despite his public safety role having been completed, consoling her and caring for her well-being, not leaving until she was able to be cared for by family. His actions and demonstration of compassion are worthy of recognition. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer Craig Taylor. This past year, Sergeant Christopher Vallow volunteered to review, edit, and compose a new Sergeant Watch Commander field training curriculum and reference guide. A new field training program was also implemented to ensure newly promoted sergeants have the tools and information they need to succeed as first-line supervisors. Due to his volunteered efforts, newly appointed supervisors are better equipped to lead and succeed in their roles. In April of 2018, Sergeant Christopher Vallow began an identity theft investigation that originated with the Anchorage, Alaska Police Department, where the victim was now located. Sergeant Vallow's investigation included working with the retailer involved, obtaining multiple grand jury subpoenas, and working with the victim over the long distance. Due to Sergeant Vallow's thorough investigation spanning over a year, he was able to obtain a felony arrest warrant for identity theft, clearing a case through diligence that at the onset appeared to have little chance of being solved. 2 Outstanding Service Awards are presented to Sergeant Christopher Vallow. I got one of these. Community Engagement Coordinator Rachel Wax has been with the Park Forest Police Department for approximately 6 months, when she spearheaded a grant application through the Illinois Criminal Justice Authority for a new initiative called TACTIC, Total Access Collaborative for Trauma-Informed Care. The TACTIC initiative aims to bring together law enforcement, schools, and mental health services in the Park Forest community in order to increase the village's ability to recognize, identify, connect, and provide services to children and adolescents impacted by trauma and violence. The grant was awarded as a result of her efforts, and $284,000 in funding was awarded to implement the program, being spread among various partners in Park Forest. The police department recently introduced the Adverse Childhood Critical Events and Safety Screener Form. This form is a series of questions intended to identify any adverse childhood experiences that are asked to all juveniles in custody from the age of 12 to 17. On November 21st, Community Engagement Coordinator Wax was monitoring the radio while preparing to leave work and heard that officers had located a missing juvenile who had possibly been a victim of a sexual assault. CEC Wax requested she be brought to the police department to be screened. Due to that screening, the child related her mother's boyfriend had been sexually assaulting her for years and had caused physical harm to her mother. Detectives were notified and charges are pending. On December 5th, while assisting with municipal court, CEC Wax was interacting with a young woman and noticed that the juvenile was alarmingly dissociated and making negative comments about herself. Though not required, CEC Wax performed a screening, and during questioning, the girl began to cry uncontrollably. CEC Wax provided comfort and asked if it would be easier to just point to the question that was causing the tearful response. The girl pointed to the question about harming oneself. The girl was subsequently transported to the hospital for a much-needed evaluation. Due to CEC Wax's efforts, 2 young women facing serious life issues who might have gone without intervention received life-changing resources. 2 Outstanding Service Awards are presented to Community Engagement Coordinator Rachel Wax.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing so far? Good? Deputy Chief Brian Reisky, let me get a drink of water and we'll begin. On January 4th, Officer Garrick Enns began investigating an incident where a transaction arranged on the internet led to the offender stealing the cell phone being sold and running over the victim's foot with the vehicle. Sergeant John Dussault assisted with the investigation, which included obtaining grand jury subpoenas for electronic evidence. Detective Hathan Elian assisted Officer Enns with conducting an interview of the suspect at the Will County Adult Detention Facility, where incriminating statements were obtained and the offender was ultimately charged with the felony offense of robbery. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Sergeant John Dussault, Detective Hatham Elian, and Officer Garrett Hens. On January 31st, detectives learned that a 4-month-old child was admitted to a hospital in Dyer, Indiana, with life-threatening injuries that were sustained at a residence in Park Forest. The child's father, who brought the baby to the hospital, gave an explanation that was not consistent with the injuries. With Detective Romofsky as lead investigator, Detective Sergeant Darren Studer and Detective Alex Bregan assisted with this investigation, working nonstop over the next week on behalf of the victim they were not sure would survive. Search warrants were executed, evidence processed, and medical documents and statements from medical professionals were obtained. The detectives' efforts developed probable cause to arrest the suspect. After a long interview, the father to the child confessed that he just snapped and harmed this child. The man was charged with 6 counts of aggravated battery to a child and was held on a $2 million bond. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Detective Sergeant Darren Studer and Detective Alex Bregan. On February 18th, Commander John Schweitzer, Sergeant Jonathan Menino, Officer Craig Taylor, and Officer David Habecker were dispatched to the 300 block of Salmonot Street, reference a man shot. The officers located a deceased man lying face down in the snow in the easement between Cook and Will counties. The officers also encountered family members and others who were distraught and emotional, and one man repeatedly threatened the crime scene by entering it and obstructing on-scene officers, and then attempted to flee the area. Using restraint, the officers controlled and protected the crime scene during a chaotic period and during frigid winter temperatures through the arrival and processing by the crime scene investigation team. Their crime scene protection efforts contributed to the offender being ultimately charged with first-degree murder. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Commander John Schweitzer, Sergeant Jonathan Menino, Officer Craig Taylor, and Officer David Habecker. On March 3rd, Commander Michael Ball, Sergeant John Dussault, Officer Timothy Hoskins, Detective Hatham Elian, and Officer Brian King responded to a shooting. Due to their quick response, control of the crime scene, and solid investigative techniques, the offender was arrested on scene. Overwhelming evidence included the firearm was recovered, and the offender was ultimately charged with aggravated discharge of a firearm. Their professional response led to the control of a volatile situation and the rapid resolution of a violent crime. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Commander Michael Ball, Sergeant John Dussault, Officer Timothy Hoskins, Detective Hatham Elian, and Officer Brian King. On March 19th, a victim reported being shot multiple times by an offender with a paintball gun from within a vehicle, and police would learn of other incidents that occurred on I-57. While responding, officers Evelyn Pizer saw the suspect vehicle and stopped it, finding a paintball gun and a bag of paintballs in plain view. Officer Justin Malakowski assisted with the investigation that resulted in the recovery of the paintball gun and ammunition, fireworks, counterfeit cash, and cannabis. Four suspects were ultimately charged with charges including mob action, battery, and possession of cannabis, and a group that was terrorizing the south suburbs was brought to justice. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Officer Evelyn Pizer and Officer Justin Malakowski. On April 3rd, Detective Justin Romofsky obtained a search warrant for a home invasion in Madison following an investigation into motorbikes stolen from victims in the Lincolnwood subdivision. Detective Commander Lloyd Elliott, Detective Sergeant Darren Studer, Detective Alex Bregan, Detective J.P. Garrity, Detective Hatham Elian, and Detective Megan Vold assisted in this investigation. 8 people inside the home were taken into custody for the investigation and other warrants. 4 handguns, 2 stolen motorbikes, cocaine, cash, and cell phones were recovered. 6 individuals were charged with a total of 13 felonies and 5 warrants. The charges include aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, felony drug charges, felony theft, obstructing, and motor vehicle theft. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Detective Commander Lloyd Elliott, Detective Sergeant Darren Studer, Detective Justin Romofsky, Detective Alex Bregan, Detective J.P. Garrity, Detective Hatham Elian, and Detective Megan Vold. On April 28th, Sergeant John Deso and Officer Regis Bowers responded to the Area J cooperatives for the report of juveniles attempting to access unlocked vehicles. Due to their quick tactical response, the 2 suspects were detained by the officers while actively trying to burglarize a vehicle. After investigation, the 2 were petitioned to juvenile court for 2 counts of attempted burglary of a motor vehicle, and the crime in progress was interrupted. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Sergeant John Deso and Officer Regis Bowers. On May 11th, Commander Michael Ball, Sergeant John Deso, Officer Timothy Hoskins, Officer Garrick Enns, and Detectives J.P. Garrity and Hatham Elian responded to the 400 block of Tamarack Street for a domestic disturbance involving a man who had threatened family members with a gun. Responding officers formed a SHIELD team and entered the residence, encountered the armed suspect who complied with the officer's commands. After investigation, the handgun and AR-15 rifle and ammunition were recovered, and the offender was charged with aggravated assault. Due to their professional response, an armed offender was taken into custody without harm to family members, the suspect or officers, and deadly weapons were recovered. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Commander Michael Ball, Sergeant John Deso, Officer Timothy Hoskins, Officer Garrick Enns, Detective J.P. Garrity, and Detective Hatham Elliott. On June 26th, Sergeant John Deso and Detective Megan Vold began an investigation into a missing 72-year-old woman with dementia. Over the next 24 hours, they conducted extensive investigative work, including obtaining financial information from the victim's credit card and financial accounts, viewing surveillance video, accessing train transportation information, and working with the Chicago and Elmhurst police departments as they tracked the woman's travels through the Chicago area. Almost exactly 24 hours later, detectives discovered the woman sitting on a park bench in Elmhurst, and she was returned unharmed. Due to their extensive efforts, a vulnerable woman was located before she became a victim of a crime or circumstances. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Sergeant John Deso and Detective Megan Vold. In July of 2018, Commander Devin Strela, while working a police detail at the Park Forest Public Library, observed a man with a laptop computer and printer printing what appeared to be payroll checks. Commander Strela spoke with the man and saw that all of the checks were printed from the same amount but issued to different names. After obtaining pertinent information, Commander Strela referred the case to the Investigations Division, and Detective Alex Bregan was assigned. Detective Bregan reviewed video surveillance, obtained subpoenas, reviewed hundreds of pages of call records, and gathered enough evidence to obtain an arrest warrant for a suspect who was taken into custody in May of 2019. During the interview, the man admitted to partaking in the fraudulent scheme and was charged with fraud. Due to both of their outstanding efforts, a crime that is difficult to detect and prosecute resulted in this arrest. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Commander Devin Strela and Detective Alex Bregan. July of 2019, a vehicle was stolen and used to commit several armed robberies in the south suburbs. On July 25th, officers David Habecker and Ryan Purdy heard over the radio that Olympia Fields detectives were covertly following the vehicle south on Orchard Drive. Officers Habecker and Purdy assisted the detectives as marked units and pursued the vehicle until it was trapped in a cul-de-sac and the driver fled on foot. The officers pursued the offender and Officer Purdy stopped him with the use of his taser. The suspect was charged with 3 counts of armed robbery and possession of a stolen motor vehicle, as well as aggravated fleeing and eluding. The outstanding service award is presented to Officer David Habecker and Officer Ryan Purdy. In the late summer of 2019, the Park Forest Police Department needed additional vehicles for our Touch a Truck event at Unity Day due to a major partner dropping out. With little notice, W&W Towing responded with multiple tow trucks for the event. Additionally, W&W Towing sponsored free haircuts for children attending the event. A licensed barber provided numerous free haircuts throughout the entire evening. Due to their contribution, the Touch a Truck event was not only successful, but an added benefit was provided at the event at no charge to park foresters. The certificate of appreciation is presented to W&W Towing for their willingness to partner with law enforcement and their going above and beyond to assist in making Unity Day a special event. On October 14th, Commander John Schweitzer, Officer Craig Taylor, Officer David Habecker, Officer Christopher Cush, and Officer Justin Malakowski responded to the 100 block of East Sycamore Drive for a shooting. Responding officers located the victim on the ground with critical injuries, but he was unable to communicate. They immediately began to render aid while calling for paramedics. A large outdoor crime scene was discovered and secured and crucial evidence protected. As a result of their efforts, the victim survived his critical wounds and a large crime scene was protected for the investigators. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Commander John Schweitzer, Officer Craig Taylor, Officer David Habecker, Officer Christopher Cush, and Officer Justin Malakowski. On October 20th, Commander John Schweitzer, Sergeant Jonathan Menino, Officer Craig Taylor, Officer David Habecker, Officer Christopher Cush, Officer Justin Malakowski, and Officer Luis Ibarra responded to an apartment building on the 100 block of Sycamore Drive for multiple shots fired inside of the building and a person shot on the 4th floor. There was so much gun smoke in the building that the fire alarm was activated. Responding officers encountered people evacuating the building as they entered. They located a high-capacity rifle magazine with live rounds and shell casings, and the victim shot multiple times on the 4th floor, immediately rendering first aid. As the victim was being treated, officers continued to clear the remaining floors of the building. On the 5th floor, officers discovered additional spent shell casings, large areas of blood, and other valuable evidence. Due to the shooting taking place on multiple floors of the building, it took multiple officers to secure the crime scene. When the scene was released, the scene had been secured for almost 15 hours. The Outstanding Service Award is presented to Commander John Schweitzer, Sergeant Jonathan Menino, Officer Craig Taylor, Officer David Habecker, Officer Christopher Cush, Officer Justin Malakowski, and Officer Luis Ibarra. Park Forest Police Department has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to physical fitness. As part of our physical fitness program, personnel who meet or exceed fitness standards more stringent than our basic fitness test receive the department's fitness citation. The following personnel earned the right to wear the fitness citation in 2019, and we ask that you stand as your name is called. Officer Regis Bowers, Detective Alex Bregan, Sergeant John Deso, Detective Hatham Elliott, Officer Garrick Enns, Detective J.P. Garrity, Officer James Jahimiak, Officer Charles Carl, Officer James Kessler, Officer Brian King, Officer Justin Malakowski, Chief Christopher Menino, Sergeant Jonathan Menino, Officer Ryan Purdy, Officer Carola Sikouskas, Detective Sergeant Darren Studer, Sergeant Christopher Vallow, Commander James Varga, and Detective Megan Vold. Thank you for your commitment to physical fitness. You may be seated. We will now present our Years of Service Awards. We recognize Administrative Assistant Catherine Worley for 5 years. She's unable to attend. We recognize Sergeant Christopher Vallow and Officer James Jahimiak with 10 years of service. With 15 years of service, we recognize Officer James Kessler, Officer Craig Taylor, Administrative Assistant Natasha Robertson, and Administrative Assistant Kathy Wellington. That's yours. While not with us today, due to another family commitment, we recognize Commander Michael Ball with 20 years of service. Thank you to each of you for your commitment to the Park Forest Police Department, together totaling 95 years of service. We will now proceed with our term awards. The term award is presented to the most outstanding member during each quarter who has performed in a consistently superior fashion. Detective Justin Romofsky received the term award for the first term of 2019. In the first quarter, Detective Romofsky's investigative diligence resulted in the clearance of Park Forest only murder in 2019, the charging of 6 Class X felonies, 13 felony charges of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, and multiple other serious felony charges. Due to his efforts, 4 handguns, cocaine, U.S. currency, 2 stolen motorbikes, and numerous cell phones were recovered. In one case, he cleared an aggravated battery to a child case where a father reported to the emergency room with a 4-month-old child with critical injuries he stated was a skin reaction. But with Detective Romofsky's investigation revealed to be a severe case of shaken baby syndrome. The father was charged and held on $2 million bond. In another case, a search warrant executed, led by Detective Romofsky, resulted in the arrest of 8 individuals who were ultimately charged with 13 felonies and 5 arrest warrants. Due to his excellence in investigations, the term award for the first term of 2019 is presented to Detective Justin Romofsky. K-9 Officer Charles Carl received the term award for the second term of 2019. During the second term, Officer Carl conducted 63 traffic stops, which resulted in 12 self-initiated misdemeanor arrests, including DUI arrests, 13 vehicle seizures, and 3 self-initiated felony arrests. 1 arrest resulted in the recovery of an illegally possessed handgun by a convicted armed robber. Another stop resulted in the recovery of a felony amount of cannabis and cash and information about illicit narcotic sales. Additionally, as a K-9 officer, Officer Carl is instrumental in conducting tracks and assisting both Park Forest police officers and other law enforcement agencies with tracks and narcotic sniffs. Due to his excellence in aggressive patrol and as a K-9 handler, K-9 Officer Charles Carl is presented with the term award for the second quarter of 2019. Officer Ryan Purdy received the term award for the third term of 2019. During the third quarter of 2019, Officer Purdy conducted 68 traffic stops, which resulted in 9 self-initiated misdemeanor arrests and 9 vehicle seizures. He conducted 20 stops of suspicious persons and made 3 felony arrests. All of this was accomplished in a shortened work order for him as he was off for 3 weeks during paternity leave. Additionally, Officer Purdy served as a mentor to 2 new officers on his shift with the opportunity to patrol as a 2-person unit. Due to his impressive work ethic and professional knowledge, Officer Purdy was recently selected as the police department's newest field training officer. The term award for the 3rd term of 2019 is presented to Officer Ryan Purdy. Detective Hatham Elian received the term award for the 4th and final quarter of 2019. During the 4th term, Detective Elian was assigned to investigate offenses that included a criminal sexual assault, armed robbery, reckless discharge of a firearm, aggravated discharge of a firearm, threats made against a school, a bomb threat made against the police department. That one didn't go so well. Aggravated battery to a peace officer, aggravated battery to a senior citizen, and other cases totaling 60 investigative files. On top of the caseload with Detective Elian was assigned, he found time to conduct special investigations into narcotic sales. After securing and executing search warrants, Detective Elian recovered controlled substances, 2 illegally owned firearms, ammunition, and implements used for manufacturing and delivery of narcotics. Additionally, Detective Elian is often seen helping his fellow officers on complex cases after his shift, insight which allows officers to bring cases to successful conclusions. Due to his excellence in investigations and leadership, Detective Hatham Elian is presented with the term award for the final term of 2019. The Meritorious Service Award is awarded for services rendered in the line of duty where the officer, because of his or her initiative, diligence, and perseverance, performs a difficult act where a crime is prevented, life saved, property protected, or criminals apprehended. On January 31st, members of the Dyer, Indiana Police Department responded to Franciscan Health Hospital for a report of a man that had entered the emergency room with a severely injured 4-month-old child who said that the child had a severe reaction to lotion, but which medical personnel doubted. Because the child lived in Park Forest, the investigation was turned over to Detective Justin Romovsky with Detective J.P. Garrity assisting. Extensive interviews with medical personnel as well as the father were conducted. The child's injuries were life-threatening and she was transported to a children's hospital where it was learned she might not ever have normal cognitive functions again. For the next week, the detectives worked nonstop gathering evidence, obtaining search warrants, processing evidence, and obtaining medical records and additional interviews of medical staff. When the father was taken into custody, he initially denied harming his daughter, but over 3 hours of professional interviewing, the man admitted that he had snapped and violently shook his daughter. As a result, the man was charged with 6 counts of aggravated battery to a child with a $2 million bond. The Meritorious Service Award is presented to Detective Justin Romovsky and Detective J.P. Garrity. On January 26, while off duty, Detective Hatham Elian was driving on Lincoln Highway when he saw a vehicle that matched a bulletin he had seen 2 days prior that was issued by the Illinois State Police regarding a shooting on I-57. The bulletin included the vehicle and suspect description, but the license plate was not known. Detective Elian took a picture of the vehicle with the license plate information and provided it to the Illinois State Police. Due to his attention and action, the Illinois State Police obtained a search warrant for the suspect's residence where the suspect was arrested and the gun used in the shooting was recovered, resulting in the suspect being charged with attempted murder. A violent crime committed on the highway would have remained unsolved but for Detective Elian's off-duty actions. The Meritorious Service Award is presented to Detective Hatham Elian. On February 18th, officers responded to a man down behind a utility easement on the 300 block of Salmonut Street. He was found to have been shot and was deceased, resulting in Park Forest only homicide in 2019. The Investigations Division responded and began an investigation that would continue unabated over the next 10 days with assistance of the South Suburban Major Crime Task Force. The investigation included an extensive canvasses of the area for witness and video evidence, which resulted in video surveillance video obtained miles from the original crime scene. A suspect and vehicle were identified, which led to subpoenas and search warrants for a wide variety of data and numerous interviews. The suspect vehicle was located and a shell casing was recovered, but as the investigation slowed, the South Suburban Major Crime Task Force was deactivated while the Investigations Division pressed on. After 10 days of solid work, the cooperation of a witness was obtained who agreed to testify before the grand jury. Through these efforts, an arrest warrant for the suspect was granted. It was learned that the suspect had fled to Las Vegas, where he was taken into custody by law enforcement in that area. On March 26, Detective Romosky flew to Las Vegas to continue the investigation, and the suspect was transported back to Illinois and was charged with first-degree murder. Due to their extensive investigation efforts, which led to the clearance of a murder, Detective Commander Lloyd Elliott, Detective Sergeant Darren Studer, Detective Justin Romosky, Detective Alex Bregan, and Detective Hatham Elian are presented with the Meritorious Service Award. On April 22nd, Officer Brian King was the first to respond to a disturbance on Nancy Street where a mentally challenged group home resident was chasing a staff member with a knife. Officer King observed the man following the staff member outside with a knife in his hand. Officer King quickly positioned his squad between the man and the victim and hurried her into his squad for her protection. Officer King then pointed his taser at the man, who was belligerent, yelling obscenities and telling Officer King to shoot him. At one point, as the man approached Officer King, he backed his police vehicle up while still continuing to address the man. As Officer King was trying to gain compliance from the subject, additional Park Forest officers responded to the scene. The man finally complied and dropped the knife and was taken into custody without harm to him, the victim, or responding officers. Due to his tactical response and deployment of crisis intervention skills, the Meritorious Service Award is presented to Officer Brian King. On May 12th, officers were dispatched to the 300 block of Merrimack Street for an adult son who had violated an order of protection and had barricaded himself inside the home. Investigation determined that the son was texting his parents, indicated that he was going to harm himself and wanted the police to kill him. The man had a history of mental illness and also an extensive knife collection. Contact was made via cell phone and he refused demands to come out of the residence and continued to indicate that he was going to harm himself or force the police to kill him. After other attempts to resolve the situation failed, the decision was made to enter the residence with Commander Michael Ball, Sergeant John Dussault, Officer Timothy Hoskins, Officer Garrick Enns, and Officer Stuart Walden, while other agency officers secured the perimeter. Officers utilized tactical tools and protective gear to approach the rear door of the residence, which they found barricaded with a washing machine, dryer, and a toolbox. Officers were able to gain entry into the residence after clearing the obstacles and moved through the dimly lit residence. They encountered the man in darkness sitting in a couch in the living room with several large hunting knives within reach. The man fortunately obeyed officers' commands and was taken into custody without harm. He was transported for a mental evaluation by the Park Forest paramedics. Due to their tactical response and use of crisis intervention skills, the Meritorious Service Award is presented to Commander Michael Ball, Sergeant John Dussault, Officer Timothy Hoskins, Officer Garrick Enns, and Officer Stuart Walden. On July 20th, Detective Justin Romosky learned that officers from the South Chicago Heights Police Department had stopped a vehicle and trailer that had been involved in a recent burglary to rehab homes in the village, and the driver said he had just come from Park Forest. Searching online for newly rehabbed homes in Park Forest, Detective Romosky located a house on the 200 block of Shavona Drive, discovered to have had forced entry and appliances stolen. Detective Romosky was able to interview the suspect, a convicted felon on parole before the other officers, and it was not anticipated that the suspect would cooperate. Due to his excellent interviewing skills, however, Detective Romosky obtained an admission to the burglary in Park Forest, and due to his rapport with the suspect, was asked to continue the interview about incidents in other towns. Due to his skill, The parolee eventually admitted to committing burglaries in South Chicago Heights, Crete, Stager, Homewood, Glenwood, Richmond Park, and University Park, as well as the location of some of the proceeds that had not yet been sold. Due to his initiative and superior investigative skills leading to the clearance of felony crimes in multiple jurisdictions, the Meritorious Service Award is presented to Detective Justin Romofsky. In November of 2017, Officer Ryan Purdy made a license plate inquiry on a suspicious vehicle driving on Illinois Street and learned that the vehicle's owner's name was an alias for a convicted child sex offender, and that the vehicle was registered to an address bordering a Park Forest school. Officer Purdy began an investigation, searching prior incidents, databases, real estate information, and used surveillance and evidence gathering techniques over the next 23 months to confirm that the man was a convicted child sex offender living within a school zone in violation of his status. As a result of the nearly 2-year investigation that began by simply running a license plate, Officer Purdy obtained a felony arrest warrant for unlawful residence within a school zone. Due to his investigative curiosity as well as maintaining investigation over nearly 2 years, the Meritorious Service Award is presented to Officer Ryan Purdy. The Civilian Employee of the Year Award is presented to the non-sworn personnel of the police department who best exemplifies by his or her performance the principles of the Park Forest Police Department. As Deputy Chief of Support Services, it is my honor to present the Civilian Employee of the Year Award. The awards board reviews nominations and narrowed the Civilian Employee of the Year candidates to 2. Those candidates were Records Clerk Christy Coyle and Community Service Officer Charles Harris. Records Clerk Christy Coyle was nominated for her extensive behind-the-scenes works which is crucial in ensuring department records are accurate and processed timely. As an example, her initiated efforts led to the department being able to issue court dockets and are more accurate than those produced by Cook County Court. Also, due to her vast experience, she is often relied upon to assist with records clerks with less experience and serves in an official leadership role within her division. She was a worthy nominee of this award. However, Community Service Officer Charles Harris has been chosen as a Civilian Employee of the Year. In 2019, CSO Harris was an invaluable member of the Support Services Division. CSO Harris updated the CSO's training book and trained our newest Community Service Officer. He was instrumental in handling numerous animal complaints, in one instance obtaining assistance from Cook County Animal Control investigators to help with 2 dogs that were constantly running at large and attacking dogs and people. As part of his role, CSO Harris takes on many duties, which is not completed by him, would have to be done by a police officer, such as transporting evidence to the Joliet Crime Lab, documents to the Markham and Joliet courthouses, and picking up vehicles and equipment. But more than just the work he does, CSO Harris was chosen for his positive spirit, which impacts his fellow employees and Park Forest residents alike. He is known throughout the village as a friendly face representing the Park Forest Police Department. The Civilian Employee of the Year is presented to Community Service Officer Charles Harris.
Apparently I'm slightly shorter than Chief Reisky. For the 34th time in the history of the Park Forest Police Department, we will be awarding the Officer of the Year. As Deputy Chief of Field Operations, it's my honor to present that award. The Officer of the Year award is presented to the officer who best exemplifies by his or her performance the principles of both the law and the Park Forest Police Department. Each year, the awards board reviews nominations and narrows the Officer of the Year candidates to 3. This year, the candidates were Detective J.P. Garrity, K-9 Officer Charles Carl, and Officer Ryan Purdy. K-9 Officer Charles Carl is a hard-working officer whose efforts at making significant self-initiated arrests and proactive police work resulted in this, his second Officer of the Year nomination in 2 years. His 2019 activity includes over 400 traffic stops, 58 self-initiated misdemeanor arrests, 14 felony self-initiated arrests, and administratively seizing 55 vehicles used in the commission of criminal offenses. Officer Ryan Purdy also has a strong work ethic, whose 2019 efforts netted 58 misdemeanor arrests, 11 felony arrests, and 15 warrant arrests. Also, as the main manager of the Park Forest Police Department's Facebook page, his efforts at informing and educating the community through humor have had a huge impact on our public communication efforts. However, Detective J.P. Garrity was chosen as the 2019 Officer of the Year. Over the past year, Detective Garrity was assigned to investigate over 51 cases, including residential burglaries, home invasions, armed robberies, sexual assaults, and a kidnapping, with one of the highest clearance rates among the detective division. These include a 4-hour interview of a suspect who battered and seriously injured his 4-month-old child, a home invasion in which an offender was charged with that crime, a multi-month investigation into the kidnapping and sexual assault of a 12-year-old girl that resulted in the arrest of a 21-year-old man for predatory criminal sexual assault of a child. And he was the lead investigator in the shooting of an 18-year-old victim. In 2019, Detective Garrity, serving as an assistant team leader with the South Suburban Emergency Response Team, which is a multi-jurisdictional SWAT team, executed more than 50 high-risk search warrants, in addition to over a dozen call-outs involving elevated risk to the public. In addition, Detective Garrity was responsible for the operational planning and execution of 10 high-risk search warrant operations executed within the Village of Park Forest. In June, Detective Garrity was selected to present at a conference in Puerto Rico where he spoke to various public officials about Park Forest Police Department's innovative youth services. In October, Detective Garrity organized a flag football fundraiser to benefit Officer Tim Jones, and he regularly participates in charity events such as St. Baldrick's and Special Olympics of Illinois. In 2019, Detective Garrity was re-elected by his peers to serve a second term as president of the Park Forest Police Pension Fund. Due to his professionalism, volunteerism, and his exceptional teamwork skills, Detective Garrity exemplifies the ideals of a Park Forest police officer. The Officer of the Year award is presented to Detective J.P. Garrity. It looks as though we're getting ready for St. Baldrick's again, JP. We will now have closing remarks presented by Chief Christopher Menino.
Was there not an incredible amount of police work done in 2019? This is the 16th time we've met in this hall for this purpose, and I've been here for all of it. When we started out, I was sitting down there, and I was one of the people who periodically come up on the stage. And over time, I have moved to where I'm on the stage. And while I love what I do, I can assure you that the actual mission of the police department is carried out over here. The incredible work you heard today over a year is really only the tip of the iceberg. A lot of good work never makes it to a nomination form. I am convinced, as I walk through the halls of the Park Forest Police Department, that we have true heroes who walk those halls with us. They are ordinary people doing extraordinary things day after day. A couple nights from now, actually tomorrow night, in a city about 2,000 miles from here, palm tree lined on the coast of California, they're going to have an award show. And entertainers and people whose job it is to entertain us are going to sit in a hall a little bit bigger than this and award and congratulate each other for being actors and making movies. And don't get me wrong, they're talented. I enjoy the movies as much as anybody else. But they get paid and they get recognized for portraying what they do in real life. Think about that. It's incredible what we do. And it doesn't get the recognition it deserves broader in society. But we do it here. We do it here to make sure that they know that they're appreciated. Additionally, we could not do what we do without support from various partners that we have. They were recognized earlier, but I want to recognize some of the village officials that are here. Mayor John Vanderbilt, Trustee Teresa Settles, Trustee Tiffany Graham, Trustee Joe Woods, Trustee Maya Hardy, and Trustee Glenna Hennessy. Thank you for being here today. Park Forest, we are very blessed in that we are not a political organization. And what I mean by that is the police department's allowed to go out and do our job without request of favor or interference. We're trusted to do what we need to do, and that backing means a lot to us. A lot of that also is spearheaded by my boss, Village Manager Tom Mick. He's here year after year. He maintains that difficult balance of keeping a pulse on what's going on in the police department while still allowing us to have the freedom to do what we need to do. And that's much appreciated. Tom and Tracy, thank you for being here. We also have partners in public safety. Chief Tracy Natashak of the fire department and his wife are here. I thank you for coming out to support us today. We have Hildy Kingma here as well. Thank you for your support. Hildy is somebody who believes strongly in social justice, and she definitely keeps the pulse on that important topic for us at the management staff level. I also saw Denise Carreras from Human Resources here as well. I also want to recognize Steve Lloyd. Steve Lloyd was a fire and police commissioner for 30 years. He hired me, he promoted me multiple times, he and the other fire and police commissioners, and he was really instrumental throughout a long period of time for contributing to our organization, the fire department, all on a volunteer basis. So thank you, Mr. Lloyd and Mrs. Lloyd, for being here. Appreciate that. Finally, if you are a parent of a police officer, step-parent, or a parent-in-law, father-in-law, mother-in-law, would you stand up for me and just remain standing if you're a parent of a police officer? It is I'm sure, a difficult thing to send your child out to serve and protect. So remain standing, but I want to give you a round of applause and thank you for giving your children to us to serve and protect in the way that we do. Thank you. If you are the child, please remain standing. Please remain standing. If you are the child of a police officer, if your mom or dad, stepmom, stepdad, if one of your parents is a police officer, would you please stand up? Risky boys, let me see you stand up. There you go. I've been on that end. My dad was a police officer for 20 years. In fact, he's one of the people standing. I know what it's like to have a parent gone quite often, and no waterworks today. And I thank you guys for what you do. It's a huge sacrifice to make. But the benefit is when you go to school, you get to say your mom or dad is the toughest person out of all the parents. So you got that going for you. Finally, if your significant other is a police officer, if you're the husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend of a police officer, would you please stand up? I won't be able to get through this one with saying too much without getting too emotional, so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you do. It's an incredible sacrifice. Lastly, if you're related at all to a police officer, it's your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, somehow you're related to a police officer, would you stand up as well? Officers, attention. Left face. Present arms. Please accept this symbolic token as our appreciation for what you do. You are the heroes, the unsung heroes of law enforcement. Thank you. Order arms. Now, if everyone would please stand up. This is Park Forest. We are extremely proud to be able to protect and serve. In some way you are connected to this village, whether or not you live here. All of these officers, whether or not they live here, they are all willing to sacrifice and lay down their life for those who do. There is, in my opinion, no greater organization to work for. I thank you for that opportunity. Now go out and celebrate all these officers tonight. Thank you.